Welcome back, everyone. Now, we wouldn't be a Coastal Living show without a Coastal Bend Beach Report. So today we have some special guests from the Padre Island National Seashore. Please welcome Charles and Charles. We got two Charleses this week. Wonderful. And just to differentiate you guys, Charles Lassiter, you're comfortable with Chuck, right?
Chuck works perfectly well.
Okay, so we'll go with Charles and Chuck just to be able to separate you guys. But thank you so much for joining us today. Now tell me what we have going on that we want to learn more about.
We have a prescribed fire going on at the park starting today.
Okay, and what exactly is that?
That is where we intentionally burn the park in order to protect and maintain our park's ecosystems.
Okay.
We also want to protect the safety of our community infrastructure, and of course the safety of our firefighters. That's the number one priority when we burn, is the safety of our community and our firefighters.
Amazing. And we're blessed to have the opportunity to inform our community about this so that we're not, I mean, do you guys get a ton of phone calls when you do these controlled burns about people thinking they're letting you know something you don't know already?
Well, it varies from time to time. I got a little bit of inquiry yesterday, but not too much at this point. I think once it actually starts to burn and people who did not catch the news reports see the smoke, that's when we'll really start getting the phone calls.
Okay. And tell me, what is it about burning the land that helps the ecosystem? What's the science behind that?
Well, what happens when we burn, it opens up the ground cover to sunlight for other plants to grow. It also helps prevent, a hard to control fire when it's hasn't been previously burned.
Okay.
So that when a fire does break out, it'll be easier to control it.
So we're looking at a photo here, which is an example of a controlled fire. Definitely something I would call 911 about and be like, hey guys, I don't know if you know this, but the beach is on fire. So it's great that we're able to talk about this. And what about any wildlife out there? Are you able to sort of survey the space before to make sure it's kind of cleared out, or is it one of those natural things that we just have to?
Yeah, most work of the fire goes in before and after. So after the fire, I'm going to be busy for a really long time.
And what's the maintenance like afterwards?
Well, we do surveys. We look at how well the burn went. We monitor the regrowth of the vegetation. We keep a close eye on the wildlife. The deer really love it after a burn because all of the fresh grass coming up, they just really love it. It's tender. Tender grass is more palatable to wildlife. So the wildlife benefit in that way. That's how it helps the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and how do you stimulate the growth? Does it just happen naturally after the burn, or do we need some rain
Actually,
to sort of initiate that?
With the ash, sand is a very nutrient poor soil, so that when we burn, that ash and the residue of the burn adds nutrients to the soil and actually acts like a fertilizer in a way.
Interesting.
So you'll see the park this spring in May. It's going to be amazing. There'll be lots of wildflowers, and it'll be really nice up there.
Very cool. I never would have thought about that. And this is really my first time learning. I guess I've, in my whole life here, never witnessed a controlled burnout on the island, never been out there at that time. So it's really interesting to learn about and to know that we do it. We know they do it in other places. So how is this benefiting the community's infrastructure?
Well, the grasses that grow out, the grass, it's primarily grasses at the beach and these coastal grasslands. And we call these perennial grasses, which means that they grow throughout the year. And then when they complete their life cycles, the vegetation dies and it accumulates at the bottom. And the root structures all remain alive. So here we have 2 and 3 growing seasons. So as a result, we'll get a lot of accumulation of dead leaves.
Okay.
That's what we call a high fuel load. It burns with a very hot, intense load. So that this burn will help eliminate a lot of that high fuel load so that when a real fire breaks out, a wildland fire, it'll be easier for us to control and less of a threat to our community.
Great. So not only are we helping the ecosystem, but in the event that this happens naturally or purposely by somebody who's abusing the beach, we're able to sort of know that that's going to be less extreme than it would if it happened on its own. Okay.
We're protecting structures.
Very good. Okay, so Chuck, tell me, what do the residents need to expect out of this? How does this affect them?
So they're going to see some smoke over the weekend, and when they come into the park, they can still come into the park. The park will not be closed, but you can expect traffic delays. That will be happening throughout. We just ask people to be very mindful as they're driving through the park because there will be firefighters in close proximity to the highways, and it will be smoke, so visibility is going to be very low. The campgrounds, there will be impact at Malachite Campground. We're not allowing any campers to come in and set up at Malachite right now because we will be burning over towards the campground. People that are already set up there, we'll ask them to relocate themselves to the visitor center parking lot. If people want to come in, they want to see what the fire looks like, they can come to the visitor center complex. That would be a safe point for them to come and actually view the fire.
Great, wonderful. So I'm glad we were able to translate all this information to our viewers. Now let's take a look at the details in case you want to get a little update on that. PINS, Padre Island National Seashore, is having a controlled burn. You can get more information at 949-8068. Of course, you can always visit their website or follow them on Twitter and Facebook, especially if you head back and forth from the island. If you're like Jocelyn and you like to go out there and fish and head back and forth, definitely make sure you're up to date on what's going on out there. And we appreciate you all for taking the time to be here and educate us about that controlled burn.